everybody. My name is Jeroen Dobler. I'm from the climate group at the Max Perutz Labs in Vienna, and it's great to see so many people again, and I'm happy to have two speakers today. Wait, I'm on the wrong slide. Two speakers today. So the first one is Gunter Getzinger from the TU Graz, and he's also part of the the Alliance of Sustainable Universities in Austria, and he will talk about what Austrian universities are doing already to become carbon neutral. So Gunter is a trained engineer, but also studied psychology. So he makes the link between technology and society, and he's also heading the Department of Science, Technology and Society at the TU Graz. And second, we will have Ulrich Leth from the TU in Vienna, and he will talk about cycling in Vienna and how we can increase the cycling. Just to give you a number, we are at the Institute, we did a survey last year, and 25% or more than 25% of the people of the VBC campus is cycling to work every day. So we're actually quite above average in Vienna, but it's still good to have some insight. And Ulrich has been or studied at the TU and stayed at the TU, so he clearly loves Vienna, and he will talk about this. So I will stop sharing my screen, but before I do, the talks will be around 25 minutes, and we will have questions after each talk. So you can either raise your hand or drop a question in the chat, and I will read it out. And then at the end, we will also have a discussion where both speakers will still be there. If you have questions or comments or suggestions, always feel free to contact us. And the next lecture will be already in 2 weeks, which will be on the 6th of July and will be on urban development by Kirsten Kellenberg from the University of Vienna and Magdalena Kleinmum from the University of Hong Kong, which will both talk about how climate change is affecting cities and how to deal with this. So with that, I hand over to Gunter.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeroen. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for your interest in net zero carbon road mapping at Austrian universities. As mentioned, I'm heading the Science, Technology and Society unit at University of Technology of Graz. That's it's 3 years ago, a quite fresh unit of about 20 scholars, having a perspective on technology from the social sciences. But the rector thought it's a good idea to make us in charge for this net zero carbon roadmap for TU Graz. And that and some other ideas I would like to share with you. So that means I'm trying to share my screen. I hope it works. So it should be full screen, but it isn't. Don't know why, but I hope everything is visible for you. Okay. Within the Austrian Alliance of Sustainable Universities, that's a group of about 15, 16 universities out of 24 public universities in Austria. We developed an instrument, a tool to make proper balances of carbon dioxide which is emitted by universities. This tool is called ClimCalc. That's the very basis of everything, so to speak. To those of you who are natural scientists, that's completely clear. First, you have to make a balance. You have to know how much something, and that something in this case is a university, is emitting in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. So we did the greenhouse gas balance for the year 2017. It was done last year and the year before. Why? Because those emission factors which show how much carbon dioxide is emitted, for example, by producing 1 kilowatt hour of electricity, are calculated within 1.5 years by our Austrian Environmental Agency. So it needs a while to have the correct emission factors for this balance. On the left side of this sheet of this slide, you see our balance and how it looks like at TU Graz. Is more or less the same for all universities. This is a typical carbon footprint, the carbon fingerprint, so to speak, more a fingerprint, I would say, for universities. So as you can see, it's 21.8 tons of carbon dioxide. When I say carbon dioxide, I mean all greenhouse gases. There are also some emissions of those more special gases like methane or chlorinated, fluorinated carbon substances from refrigerators, for example. But most of it is carbon dioxide. So the main share comes from electricity. No electricity can produce without emitting carbon dioxide. That's completely clear, because also for hydropower stations, for example, you for the construction of these hydropower stations, you emit carbon dioxide, and that's also included here. Most of the electricity in Austria is coming from hydropower, but parts, especially in winter, come from gas, from burning natural gas, and that means a lot of emissions. As you can see here, electricity, district heating, also here, most of it comes from burning natural gas, especially in Graz, where I come from. It's maybe a little bit less in Vienna. It depends very much on the technology you use for producing your district heating. Natural gas directly used or other fuels do play a minor role. The second very important factor for doing a balance for a university is mobility. And here we found out something very interesting, that our business trips, mainly with airplanes, emit almost as much as electricity does, our electricity consumption. So it's more than 5 tons just by business trips. You should include also those trips abroad. This is typical academic mobility. If somebody is out for half a year, for example, he or she also uses airplanes, of course. And commuting, Jérôme mentioned it, also TU Graz employees like to use bicycles and public transport, but some of them are commuting by car, by traditional cars, so to speak, with fossil fuels driven cars, and that means more than 2,000 tons of emissions. And we had also a closer look on different materials like IT appliances, paper, and those mentioned refrigerants. You see they don't play a very big role, but they do. And our canteen our Mensa also was calculated with about 300 tons of carbon dioxide emitted here. Then we developed, how should I call it, a waterfall diagram. Had a closer look at what's possible to reduce, and found out that especially with electricity and district heating, we can do a lot, especially electricity, by switching from, so to speak, traditional normal electricity, which comes just out of the grid, to a specifically certified electricity, green electricity, so to speak. You can reduce very much of your carbon dioxide emissions, about 11 tons. As you can see on the left side of this diagram, we also calculated our growth until 2030, and that means another 3,800 tons plus carbon dioxide emissions. Then extensive use of heat pumps can reduce 700 tons. And very, very much important, I really would like to stress this point, very much reduction comes from our policy of reduction, of reducing business trips. Our rector decided minus 50% until 2030. Commuting, this is more or less by switching those people who are coming by car to bicycle, public transport, and electricity-driven cars. A little bit in the sector of materials and food, and then we do have an unavoidable rest of emissions, which is about 8,000 tons. This we would like to compensate by projects which have to do with reforestation, or let's call it wilderness on the one side, on the one hand, and on the other hand, with agricultural projects, with projects trying to improve soil, so to speak. So we found out that these projects are able to compensate parts of our emissions. But this is in development, under development. It's not completely clear what we will do with this compensation. As mentioned, we try to become a carbon neutral university in 2030. By the way, there are at the moment, about 5 to 10 universities which are doing the same as University of Technology in Graz, developing a roadmap and introducing measures to reduce their emissions. A closer look to these measures. Here you see also the timeline, which is a very tight one, I would say. So many measures are introduced right now in 21. Some of them were introduced in 22, like subsidy for public transport network cards, support of TU Graz bicycle. This is a measure which was introduced already in 2007. So there is a special branded TU Graz bicycle, and at the moment there are in Graz about 2,000 of these bicycles on the roads in Graz already. You can buy it for 195 euros. It's worth, I think, about 700 euros. The rest is paid by University of Graz for the employees. Well, and I would like to focus on our measures regarding mobility, because, as I mentioned, these ones are of special importance, and somehow they are fresh, I would call them. We will introduce a climate protection charge on business trips by plane. So if you use a plane for a business trip to another European university, you will have to pay an extra charge of 100 euros. Intercontinental flights will have a charge of 200 euros. This money, which will not be well, it will be a big pot which will be installed by the rector by this money, and he will finance by this money business trips by train. So the tickets for train trips which are longer than 3 hours will be paid, and it will be first class tickets which will be paid by our rector when you use train or bus for this business trip. And on the other side, also night trains will be paid by the rector by 100%. So these are just two measures which are quite, I would call them fresh and quite strong. And we hope to reach our target of -50% of carbon dioxide emissions by planes by employees of University of Technology in Graz by 2030. Why this focus on business trips? Just my last slide. Here you can see the really enormous difference of carbon dioxide emissions by planes on the left side and by trains or buses on the right side. It's just huge. So we have to change our business trip habits. This was completely clear to us when developing this roadmap. So from my point of view, that's all. As mentioned, there are 5 to 10 universities in Austria right now developing that kind of roadmaps, which lead to climate neutral universities in 2030. We hope it will be all of them, all 24 Austrian universities during this year or next year. First step, as mentioned, always is that balance, that calculation of the carbon dioxide emissions of that very university. And yeah, we are on our way, so to speak, and hopefully we will succeed. Thank you very much for your attention.
Super, thank you, Gunter. Please, so I see people already writing questions in the chat, so please write your questions in the chat. Before I go into the question, I have my question myself, Gunter. What you didn't mention is that the measures at the TU Graz are already backed up by a budget, right? Because I think that's also a big thing. Is how did you convince the rectorate or the management from the university in Graz to really back the measures up with a strong funding?
It was not really a question to convince them, because they were convinced, because every how should I coin it? Every rational person has to say that climate change is the most serious problem we have the next 10 years. And I'm talking about 10 years because in 2030, it's not a question anymore. It's just done. So we have to do it right now, immediately. And it was completely clear to our rectorate, the whole rectorate, and mainly by Rector Kainz, who is heading that whole group of about 40 people who are now working in bringing these measures into reality. And it was also clear that there has to be a budget. Of course, it's nice that TU Graz is not the poor university. We have quite a nice turnaround with many hundreds of projects. And as you know, there's always something like an, how is it called, overhead, who is to be given to the rectorate when you are doing a project, and they are just financing it out of that money. It's 11 million euros within 10 years, the budget. And it was decided in August 2020. by all hierarchies, so to speak, at University of Technology. They didn't ask the ministry because it's autonomous. Universities in Austria are autonomous. They can do with their money what they want.
Super cool. Yeah, thanks. So there's one question, I guess, for people in Austria who knows, but the question is renewable electricity also including nuclear? So people in Austria would know that Austria never built a nuclear plant, or they built one but never used one. So the mix here is very nuclear free. But maybe I can extend the question is, do you think nuclear is an option for the next 10 years as to reduce CO2?
No, not for the next 10 years, of course not. As far as I know, the hype with nuclear is over. So there is maybe one in Great Britain and one in Finland, I don't know. But decommissioning nuclear power plants is more the challenge the next 10 years or 20 years than commissioning them. I'm quite sure that nuclear power doesn't play a major role in fighting climate change. Because of time, we are running out of time. And nuclear power stations need at least 10 years in advance to be commissioned, to become part of the grid.
Good. One question from Ulrich, which I think is interesting, since you talked about mobility. Did you at the TU Graz already measure what was the impact of COVID on the emissions? And could this be an indicator of what's like only needed of travel, right? Because we also did a survey here. We don't have the results yet, but we more or less around 10% of the flights compared to 2019.
Yeah, of course. And we had a closer look to the business trips already. We are doing now our balance for 2020, and we found out that it's minus 90% with business trips, carbon dioxide emissions. With commuting, it's not so much. It's just the students, of course, because the students commuting is also part of the balance, of course, because the universities are causing that emissions. With employees, it's almost nothing, interestingly. It's 90%, minus 10%. With the students, as we can see, it's minus 70, 80%.
Okay. One question from Anja Westram was great idea with the paying for the flights or the additional. The question is there any legal obligation or problem because you're paying a fee from research money? Could that be a problem or not really?
No, it's not. It's not.
Because it's like a tax on.
Yeah. And it's up to the institute or the organizational unit of the university how to pay those 100 euros. As you may know, this is almost nothing within project budgets. Project budgets consist mainly of personnel
Costs, yeah.
The money for personnel costs, and the money for traveling is almost nothing. It's always, I don't know, about 2,000 euros, 3,000 euros, 5,000 euros. That's almost nothing. So also that fee or charge is nothing of nothing. But altogether, it's a lot.
Yeah. But was there any big objection from the or from people to this?
Not one.
Okay.
Not one. Because it's also a question of authority, maybe. Our rector now is in his third term, and he is an old man, and what he says is it's the law.
Okay.
It's the law. It's just
Good.
the law.
So we have two more questions.
No discussion. And of course, there are some weird persons also at TU Graz, but they do not open their mouth. They shut up.
So one is do you know in the green electricity mix, is biomass also considered renewable or not?
Yes, of course. We are focusing on Umweltzeichen 46, environmental certification number 46 of the Austrian eco-certification system, made by our consumer union. It's made by a consumer union. It's VKI, that organization, Verein für Konsumenteninformation in German. And that's very, very strict. And the emission factor of that green electricity is just 10% of the normal emission factor. And biomass is also in parts included. It's mainly, of course, hydropower, but it's also the construction of that certificate is that you finance new installations of photovoltaics, mainly wind power and different others. Biomass doesn't play a major role in Austria with producing electricity.
Yeah, so we can do one more question. So one question was, you talked about compensation for the remaining CO2, and the BOKU has on their website that it's 25 euros per ton, which is quite low. So that means for budget-wise, it's maybe good, but is that the real calculation, or well, how should we think about compensation?
In my view, it's a little bit too low. We will start next year in 2022 with 30 euros, investing 30 euros per ton. That makes 240,000 euros in 22 with 8,000 tons, so to speak. But this carbon price will go up to 100 euros in 2030. At least, so it was decided to make a minimum price. So there are discussions and developments in Europe with carbon pricing, also on a legal or legislative level. And of course, you have to observe these discussions. So we start with 30, and it will, and that's promised or decided, go up to 100. But maybe at the end of the day, it will be 200. We will see. We will see.
Super, cool. So thanks a lot.
Important is I think that you decide on the target, and the target has to be 0. That's easy. It's 0. It's just 0.
Thanks. So thanks a lot, Günther, for your insight. Stay with us because maybe there's some questions at the end, but for time reasons, I want to hand over to Ulrich. And I'm keen to hear, Ulrich, what you want to say about cycling in Vienna. So please take over and start your slides.
Yes, hello everyone. Thanks, Sharon, for inviting me to this lecture series. Sharing my screen right now. I think everybody should see it. Yeah, thanks for the invitation. And I chose the topic about cycling in Vienna. Subtitle about the goals of the city, what could easily be done, and what was done perhaps insufficiently in the past. Just a few things I want to talk about. But first, it's interesting to know what cyclists really want. Sorry, some of the slides are in German. But I will explain the basic points. So there was some survey where cyclists basically do feel safe. And the main point was that they feel safe when they can cycle on separate cycle paths. So that was most of the answers were in this category. Second most was that they feel safe when there is low other traffic like car traffic. The other side, if you ask cyclists where they do feel unsafe or not safe, it's basically the opposite. It's when they have to cycle with a lot of cars, with high speeds, and when there's no cycling infrastructure, and when they have to drive in or cycle in mixed traffic with the cars. And then lower points were when the weather is bad and if it's dark outside and so on. But basically it's about the infrastructure and the other modes of transport. So there was an interesting survey on that that found out, it was done in Portland, but also in the meantime in other cities worldwide, with basically the same outcome, that there are two groups, the yellow and the green one, who are strong and fearless, or at least confident riding in traffic, also in mixed traffic. And that's basically the cyclists that we have right now, also in Vienna, because the network is not quite a network, but I'll come to that later. Then there is about 1/3 of the people who won't cycle at all because of different reasons. They don't like to, they don't want to, or they are not able to. And then the largest group, in most surveys, more than 50%, they are interested but concerned, meaning if we provide some good infrastructure for them, they would cycle for everyday trips. So, but what is safe infrastructure? There's a whole, there are regulations on how cycling infrastructure should be or should look like, but there's a really good indicator, and it's also from an initiative, I think it was also in Portland. So basically, if a 12-year-old girl wants to and can ride on her own to school in traffic or in a cycling network, then it's safe for basically everyone. Also for older people, also for people who are not that used to cycling yet. So basically for everyone. So that's a good indicator. And perhaps when you're cycling next time, just imagine if you had a child, or if you have a child, if you would let it cycle on the current infrastructure in Vienna. So when we want to improve cycling infrastructure, it's good to take a look at the countries and cities that do that best. So from the Dutch cycling manual, they have some indicators or some basic principles that they use to improve cycling. One is the directness. Cyclists are dependent on their body energy when they're cycling. So basically they are against any kind of detours, be it in a spatial way or in time. So the cycling infrastructure or the cycling routes should be as direct as possible. Another one is safety. That's directly coming or a result from also the survey I showed you before. You have to avoid the differences in speed and mass. If there is a lot of car traffic, if it's fast car traffic, then you should separate the cycling traffic and of course also the pedestrian traffic from it. If there is low speeds, few cars, then you can mix them. Problem in Vienna or in Austria in total, that's a screenshot of the guidelines currently, that planners have a large window they can use if they want to mix car traffic and cycling traffic, or if they want to separate it. So it's possible to mix cycling and car traffic up to 80 kilometers per hour, or up to 18,000 cars per day. So that's really a lot and really inconvenient for cycling. So that's a big problem, especially when these high thresholds are used in reality. Coming to the benefits of cycling, one is obviously traffic safety, at least from the point of being dangerous to other modes of transport. You can see the casualties in traffic in Vienna for the last 15 years or so. And you can see that cyclists are, well, cause really few or basically none of casualties, but they are casualties themselves of other modes of transport. Actually, there was one accident between a cyclist and the car driver, where the car driver died, but we couldn't really find out what the reason behind that was. But from this graph, you can see that the traffic concerns, the problems arise as soon as cars, or especially also lorries, are mixed or interfere with especially pedestrians and cyclists. There are other benefits of cycling, for example, the spatial efficiency. In the inner city, we have quite few space that we have to distribute to the different modes of transport, and walking and cycling are really efficient, obviously. So they use up few of the space, while cars use up a lot of space, especially when they are driving fast and when the occupancy rate is low. And the occupancy rate, meaning how many people are in the car, is about 1.1 or 1.2 for everyday traffic in Vienna. Other benefits of cycling, there are some external gains even compared to external costs. So for society, 1 kilometer driven in a car, society has to pay nearly 90 cents in costs for accidents, congestion, environmental costs, and so on. And on the other side, for every kilometer cycled, society gains 26 cents, especially from health benefits. If you're traveling more actively, the health system even saves some costs for the society. So there are, with cycling, we can tackle a lot of the waves that are coming over us, not only right now, but also in the next years. You know, it's climate friendly, nearly climate neutral, and one other thing cycling tackles is also the obesity problem that in our societies is getting more and more problematic. Now, what are the goals of the city? I just picked out some goals from the urban mobility plan from Vienna, goals for 2025. That obviously the trips, the routes for cycling should be shortened. So Contraflow cycling in one-way streets should be possible. really a network of cycle routes should be implemented, and there should also be long distance cycling routes, especially interesting for commuters coming also from the outskirts of the city or even from Lower Austria. More interesting, SPÖ also had in their election campaign really really great ideas concerning how the cycling network in Vienna should continue. They wanted to increase the area or the space for cycling 10 times, because now it's about 1%. And they had some really specific ideas how to do that, which basically were the same as Platz für Wien also did. But I will come to that later. And also in the coalition agreement, perhaps you followed it, the only thing remaining was the increasing of the space for cycling, but they also promised to invest 20 million more per year for cycling infrastructure. In the last years, it was about 6 million per year. The thing is, Vienna has also set itself the goal to decrease the amount of car traffic, or the share of car trips from right now, that's the black part, from right now 27% to 20% in 2025 and to 15% in 2030. What you also can see from this development in the last years is that it's stagnating for 10 years or so. So basically there was no changes anymore, with one exception in the last year, 2020, where you can really see the impacts of COVID restrictions. People didn't want to use public transport, the yellow part, but pedestrian traffic and cycling increased a bit, but car traffic also stayed at 27%. So what I get from that is that there are really drastic measures necessary to reach those goals of the city. Which could be such measures. One is contraflow cycling. This is a diagram from Radlobby Wien, where they took a look at how many one-way streets are open for cycling right now and how many are not open. And these white parts are the ones still missing. And from that, you can see that only in the 10th district, for example, there are nearly 70 kilometers of one-way streets that could be opened for cycling from one day to the other, because the roads are quite wide there. And yeah, that would be one measure to improve the conditions for cycling, because as I said before, cyclists don't like to take detours. So that would be an easy measure to improve cycling. Another one is bicycle parking. You can also see how much the current speed of providing bicycle parking should increase to reach the goals concerning cycle parking in some of the districts. Some are, the right districts are on track, but on the left side, you see the 19th district or the 23rd district really need to improve and increase their speed of providing cycling parking. Another quick win would have been, or in other cities was, or were the pop-up bike lanes. They were really good possibility to provide safe bike infrastructure quite fast in the COVID crisis, because a lot of people tried bikes first for leisure trips, then also for trips to work, because they wanted to avoid public transport. And Vienna unfortunately only provided 2.4 kilometers of those pop-up bike lanes, and erased them. In the meantime, other cities such as Berlin, for example, provided much more in the first place, and in the second step now made them permanent. Before I talked about the cycling network, if you take a look at the cycling network, it's about 1,300 kilometers. Now it's a bit more. That's already 5 years old, I think, this graph. But if you take a look at all the cycling infrastructure, you would guess that it's quite a convenient network. But you can see on the left side which infrastructure is included here. If you reduce all the zones that are mixed with car traffic, this is the network which remains, where you can see the Donauinsel is in there, also the paths along the Wien Fluss and Donaukanal. And if you also take away that, this is the network that is really separated bicycle paths. So that's not really a network, and that's basically the reason why the mode share of cycling in Vienna isn't that high, apart from obviously that the public transport share in Vienna is really high compared to other cities. Another reason for that is that the infrastructure in Vienna is sometimes, even if it was built in the last 2 or 3 years, it's not up to the standards that should be reached. This is an example in Wattgasse in the 16th and 17th district, where there is so much car traffic and 50 kilometers per hour that this should have been a separated cycle path. But to save the parking spots, it was only a Mehrzweckstreifen, and yeah, that's mixed traffic. If you go back to the slide before, no 12-year-old girl would be allowed to cycle here. Another problem, for example, in Praterstraße, we now have the discussion if one car lane could be reduced to really improve the space for cycling infrastructure there. I have to say there are also good examples in Vienna. Near TU, there is the new Naschmarktradweg. There was Getreidemarkt cycling path built in the last years. Also, Lidlgasse was a good practice example. So there's good and bad happening right now in Vienna. Coming back to what is planned in the next year, for 2021, there are 21 Radwegprojekte, it says here, but basically only a few of them are really cycle paths, separated cycle paths. The other ones are Fahrradstraßen or Contraflow Cycling. One critique as well here. As I said, the coalition wanted to increase the budget by 20 million, from 6 to 26 million, but the budget for 2021 is only about 9 million euro, because there are still only a few projects and with the current speed of planning, the city couldn't even spend all the money they wanted to dedicate to more cycling infrastructure. Yeah, and that's why I'm coming back to myself. That's why I'm not only working in science at the Vienna University of Technology, but also as an activist, for example, Platz für Wien. You can see right on the right side here, and also as an advisor for Radlobby Wien, so the cycling advocacy group, and for Geht doch Wien initiative for pedestrian traffic in Vienna. So thank you very much. And I see the chat is piling up with questions.
Yes, super, Ulrich. Thanks a lot for the insights from Vienna. So I hope for the international people, it's not too Vienna center, but please compare it to your city and ask Ulrich questions. I have one question. I was cycling yesterday, and you were saying there's more Fahrradstraßen in also so bike streets in Vienna. There seems to be put everywhere where there's just cars. Like in the 3rd district, they're always only 200 meters long. There's a big sign now. They make lots of paints, and I guess to me it seems that it's good for statistics, but it's not very practical. So my question is a little bit how to really compare what's really makes a difference and what's just statistics, more or less.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's also why I did this map I just showed you in the first place, because there was also this high number of 1,400, 1,500 kilometers of cycling infrastructure that Vienna was boasting with. But when you took a look at it, the separated cycling infrastructure is just 10 to 15%. And the rest is everything from Fahrradstraßen, cycling-friendly routes, up to just cycling routes where there is only a green sign somewhere indicating that you can ride your bike in this road, and that's all of the infrastructure there. So that also makes it difficult to compare it with other cities. But actually, I'm also not sure how other cities measure their cycling infrastructure, because it always depends on what you count as cycling infrastructure. If it's only separated cycle paths, or if you count everything where a cyclist can ride on.
I think Oli wants to ask a question. So if people want to ask a question in person, also just raise your hand and you can also ask a question. Oli.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So first of all, thank you very much for your push with biking in Vienna. This is very much needed. I still remember that moving to Vienna, which is certainly a very great city to live in, one of the worst things is biking. The traffic in this city is a nightmare. And it's not only the lack of bike paths, it's also the lack of drivers being educated to drive on the same road together with bikers. I personally actually don't mind driving on the road, because typically bike paths can be so narrow and zigzaggy and so on that for a confident driver, the road is sometimes better, but it needs drivers that don't take it as a competition to kick bikers off the road. So one comment that I would like to make is, as long as you can enumerate examples of bike paths being built, like along the Naschmarkt and so on, we have a problem, right? Because, I mean, we shouldn't be talking individual bike paths anymore. We should be talking the cases where it's still missing. I mean, we need a complete change of plans. And just like you were arguing in the Danish example that, you know, bikes don't like to go in a kind of detour way and cross the street, wait at the traffic, go to the other side and so on. You can actually do the exact same thing for cars, right? if cars always are the last to go, then it's annoying to drive a car, and you will much rather go into a tram or on a bike, right? Simple as that. So I've been, for example, contacting the city of Vienna to extend the bike paths going to our campus that sometimes end from some directions, like 100 meters before the campus. And there's hundreds of students working here. And it went through all kinds of things. And then eventually I was told that, sorry, there's no space for it. On Rennweg, for example, coming towards the city, it's a path that is, I don't know, the street is like 6 meters wide and still there's no space for a bike path. That doesn't make any sense. And my assumption is that, or my conclusion was that it's actually the district heads that are responsible for implementing these bike paths, right? And of course, the students that work on our campus, they don't necessarily live in the 3rd or the 10th district. So the person who runs the 10th district is more concerned about the parking spaces of the people living there than about the bikers passing there. So isn't that a major thing that we need to change, that bike paths are not decided by the local king, but rather by the city government? And how can we turn things upside down completely, like in a revolution style? I mean, who do we need to talk to? Is it the NEOS? Is it the SPÖ? Who the hell is completely non-responsive here? Thank you. Many questions, sorry.
No, but that's exactly the problem, the distribution of competences, and that the district leaders are responsible for most of the traffic planning, but not the planning part, but the deciding part. There is even a main cycling network by the city, the Hauptradnetz, which is done by MA18, so by the city administration, and but the city has no possibility to force its implementation. So it's really on the district level. If cycling infrastructure is built, and
what is all this election campaign bullshit then, where they say that they want to implement so and so much if they know exactly that they don't have to do it because it's actually not in their responsibility?
Well, as Platz für Wien, we also visited some of a lot of the district mayors before the election campaign, and they also told us what we wanted to hear. So that's not only the problem on the city level, but before elections you will hear whatever you need to hear. I fear. But I think it's up to the public or to civil society to make itself heard, and also perhaps to the university, because as a bigger player, if you're a lot of people, then especially also inhabitants in the district, then it puts more pressure on the representatives in the districts on the one side, and on the other side they often tell us that they can that they dare to make more how to say, innovative projects if there is pressure from the public or from civil society. If there's no pressure, they don't have to do anything. So I think it's up to us to demand better infrastructure and to build networks where we can demand that.
Yeah, so to answer Uli's question, what we are doing at the climate group is also to link up with the other universities. So I think the example from Graz was that little happened till the mass grow. So we also contacted the city and we had some good contacts with Hebein, but now the Green Party is gone in Vienna. But now there is a UNICO, so all the universities from Vienna will meet in September, and this is the only topic on the agenda. So this is slow, but it's happening, and we run into the same problem that one voice is too little. So we're trying to combine our voices as universities, and this will be brought up to the to the group. The big problem I also see is that many people that sits in management of universities and research institutes are not cycling, right? I mean, we're the generation that start cycling with some exceptions. So we have to take it up, yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Good. Are there any more questions? Sorry, I've lost the overview from the chat. I think there were some examples from, or one question was how to support it financially. So I think there were some questions. Is there anything in Vienna from like workshops or bike repairs, or we should be aware of, Ulrich, or any of these initiatives?
Bike repair hubs, people pay parts. Yeah, I know one. It was in Hasnerstraße in the 16th district. There is something called like bicycle kitchen, I think, where you can just come and pay for the parts.
So these things exist in Vienna, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're making a website and we'll put these things up on the website. I'll hand over to Uli for one more comment, and then we will close today's seminar.
Sorry, I just forgot to take my hands down. But
okay, no problem. So good. So then I thank Gunter and Ulrich for joining us today. So thanks a lot for sharing experiences in Graz and in Vienna. The talk will also be recorded, so we'll put it on our YouTube channel. And if there's any more questions, please contact us on our climate email address. And just a reminder, the next seminar will be on urban developments on the 6th of July. Thanks a lot and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.